Welcome back to TRT World. Let's remind you of our top story now. More than 100 Russian diplomats around the world are being expelled after a former Russian spy was poisoned in the British town of Salisbury. In the past half hour, the NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg also said that accreditation would be withdrawn from Russian officials at the mission to NATO to send a clear message over Russian actions in Salisbury. Let's speak to Alex Titus, who's the policy advisor at the America First Policies, a non-profit organisation based in Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us, Alex. So, first of all, what do you make of the NATO action? NATO and Russia have had a pretty rocky relationship for a few years now, but NATO saying it wants to send a clear message to Russia over its actions in Salisbury.
Yeah, so the NATO actions, which we just heard announced just a little bit ago, fall in line with not only the actions of the EU, but also the actions of the United States as well. And as we heard yesterday, in really a shocking development, the Trump administration decided to expel 60 Russian diplomats from the United States. And this includes 48 diplomats from the Washington, D.C. Russian embassy, as well as 12 Russian diplomats who are working at the United Nations in New York City. And I think that this really goes to show that the Trump administration, NATO, and the EU are really working in lockstep to not only condemn the attacks that happened in Salisbury and the poisoning, but also to send a really strong message to Vladimir Putin and the Russian regime through action that Putin will be held accountable when the Russians decide to take ridiculous aggressive actions like this on a NATO and EU ally. So I think this really goes to show that the Trump administration is serious about countering Russian aggression.
Is President Trump in lockstep with the administration, though? Because he's, in the past, shown quite a marked leniency towards Russia and Vladimir Putin in particular. And we've heard very little from President Trump himself, personally, about these mass expulsions.
So this is a narrative that we continue to hear from a number of media outlets in the West, and I think that President Trump's actions speak a lot louder than his words when it comes to dealing with Russian aggression. And let's take a look at last December when, in a major shift in U.S. foreign policy, President Trump decided to ship high-powered sniper rifles and Javelin rockets to Ukraine to help counter some of the Russian aggression that's going on in Crimea and other parts of eastern Ukraine. And in a very underreported story in February, we had the deadliest U.S.-Russia clash since the Cold War, where 300 Kremlin-backed hired guns were obliterated by AC-130s and Apache helicopters in Syria. And after it was found out that 45 of these individuals were Russian citizens, you didn't see any apology issued by President Trump or the administration. You saw the president and the administration confirm that these Russian Kremlin-backed guns were going to attack a U.S. position and that we took the necessary actions to defend not only our allies, but also our own soldiers as well. So I think we hear this narrative a lot, but the actions of the president.
I was going to say that the action's been taken to send a clear message to Russia, but the question remains that, you know, is there still going to be high-level dialogue between the US and Russia? Because the point has been made that it's easier to keep tabs on a frenemy if you have contact with them.
This is true, and I think you see President Trump over and over again trying to create good relationship with Russia, and I think you see the president starting to get more upset that Vladimir Putin is not really coming to the table and being in good faith with these conversations. I mean, you just saw Jim Acosta from CNN yesterday ask the White House if sanctions are taken off the table against Putin, and the White House says that's an action that they are considering, is putting sanctions on Vladimir Putin himself. And I think that President Trump has tried over and over again to reach out and reach across the table and create good relations, but that Vladimir Putin and his regime just aren't acting in good faith. And I hope this is something that we can see their side come to the table more on, and that we can see better U.S.-Russian relations, but Vladimir Putin just continues to take actions that are against U.S. interests and against our allies.
Alex, good to speak with you. Thank you very much indeed for that. Alex Titus there in Washington, D.C.